Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Creative Are You podcast, where everyone's creative, whether you think so or not. It's all about your perspective. But I'm here to potentially give you a new perspective. All right. So I just want to thank you. Hope everyone is doing well. I'm sure everyone is doing well. So the name of this podcast is Does Creativity End as a Child? At least I think that's what I want to name this one. Being creative as a child, that tends to slowly change as we get older, as we are actually introduced to new responsibilities, and we get older and we experience new levels of education. It tends to have a trickling effect on our creativity, and we may end up feeling not as creative when we're older. I will frequently share articles, blogs, and reviews to reinforce our topics. Two different blogs. One of the blogs is actually the same blog that I shared on the last podcast, but it's actually just one quote from that, but it went well with this podcast, so I wanted to actually share that. The last blog that I shared was creativeworkshop.com, and I'll also share another review, or actually it's a stat or something like that, from ideatovalue.com. Okay. And I will start, and it reads as follows, and I will maybe interject or comment on it. It reads as follows. So many things get erased from us. And I mean really erased early on, not only because of what other people say, but what we feel about what they say. Think about times that you've been creative, or that you feel that you were being creative, and yet someone has something to say to you about it that is not the best. Or what about a time that you feel like you were being creative and you got very positive reinforcement in response to what you were doing? How did that make you feel? It probably made you feel like doing it more. And for the previous comment, it probably would lead you to not do it the same way, or possibly not do it again. Now, some people who may be rebellious in nature, it may cause them to push harder, but everyone's not made up the same way. Okay, let me continue to read the quote. We are pigeonholed so early in our lives that many of our talents have gone untapped and leave us yearning, wondering what we are missing. I mentioned my avatar. I mentioned on the last podcast the individual that I'm actually speaking to, and I think I actually forgot to speak about the other one, the other person. But anyway, again, the 31-year-old male who did everything right, who was the super overachiever, has the awesome job, makes a lot of money, but feels unfulfilled, okay? Or is unfulfilled, has that, I mean, again, has everything, material-wise has everything, but feels unfulfilled. Well, could he be this man who as a child felt pigeonholed? And again, being a high achiever is not a bad thing, but what if the thing that he was caused to be a high achiever in was not the thing that he was created to do? What if the people around him did not assess what his gifts were? What if they didn't give him the access to things that he was already inclined to do? That's a great disservice to a child. Okay? I'm going to read that again. We are pigeonholed so early in our lives that many of our talents have gone untapped. There are some individuals that I ask them, like, what is their thing? And they don't know. They can't tell you what their thing is. And then I ask them, well, what do you love to do? And they can't answer that question either. That tells me that perhaps early on there was something that happened, because every child has something that they draw toward. They have something that they draw toward, like, automatically. Okay. And because we have other people in our lives, somebody's going to respond to that. And a lot of times our courage, our tendency to be confident about that thing tends to be cultivated based on how it's reinforced around us. Okay, let me continue. We are pigeonholed so early in our lives that many of our talents have gone untapped and leave us yearning. And how many of us are yearning but not telling anyone that this is our feeling? Okay, wondering what we're missing. This gentleman, he's wondering, he's not happy, he's wondering what is missing. All right. As we grow up, we internalize those judgments people made about us when we become very good at crushing our own creative aspirations. I'll read it again. We internalize those judgments people made about us, and we become very good at crushing our own creative aspirations. We become self-sabotaging. We become very good at crushing our own creative aspirations. We start to mimic what other people did to us. I think that's pretty significant. We start to mimic and copy and further rehearse and become successful at crushing our own creative aspirations. Man, I just had to let that simmer. I'll continue reading. We become our own most vicious critics. And how do we create when a part of us is choking that impulse? And I had to share that. All right. It is so important that we practice the awareness of creativity. It's so important that we practice the awareness of knowing that we are creative, first off. Okay. And when it comes to being creative, practicing being creative, we have to practice that courage. We have to be courageous at it. We have to, not have the highest of expectations, but not be afraid to try it and just keep going and just build and build on top of what you previously tried and just keep going from there. All right. Next, I would actually like to share with you from ideatovalue.com. And I'm going to share with you that particular quote. And let me mention too, the second person that I speak to is the individual, the male, same age, all right, and who is aware of his creativity, but is reluctant to share his creativity. Everyone that he knows doesn't know his gifts. Now, I'll be honest with you, I identify with that particular individual. Even though I've shared with people, I know that I've been reluctant. I know that I've held back, to a level. Okay. I'm older than 31, but I know that I've done that in my life. And this is one of the reasons that I really want to speak to the individuals that are missing the opportunity to practice the awareness or share their creativity. Okay. Now, ideatovalue.com. It reads this. This is it's not a quote, it's more so an intro or like a headline or an intro to a graph that I actually want to share. It reads this. In 1968, now I know that was a long time ago, and I probably should find a more recent stat. In 1968, George Land with Beth Jarman conducted a research study to test the creativity of 1,600 children ranging in ages from 3 to 5 years old who were enrolled in a Head Start program. This was the same creativity test he devised for NASA to help select innovative engineers and scientists. The assessment worked so well, he decided to try it on children, and he retested the same children at 10 years of age and again at 15 years of age. And I think he it is actually he and she. But now I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the results of this study. And again, This group of children, 1,600 children in this study, ranging from the ages between 3 to 5 years old. All right. The same 1,600 children were tested again 5 years later. That same group tested again another 5 years later, around the age of 15. And then again, actually 10 to 15 years later. So average age about 31. And when I found this study, I was like, wow, the person that I'm talking to is a 31-year-old. So it's interesting that I found this study, and my avatar is not even based on this study. They entitled it Creativity Scores at Genius Level. Now, at age 5, it was 98%. Okay, so that's highly creative. Highly creative. At age 10, 30%. So between the age 5 and age 10, it dropped from 98% to 30. These are 1,600 children ranging from the age of 3 to 5, okay, scoring at 98% at that age range, okay? But they just had it at age 5. And then again, 5 years later at 30%. That's such a drastic fall, a 60% fall pretty much. And again, at age 15, again, 5 years later, at 12% creative. Then tested again around the age 30, 31, which was, this time it was adults, 280,000 adults, average age 31, 2%. It's crazy. It's crazy. So yeah, understand that, as we're living lives like each and every one of us that are 30, 40, all of us used to be kids. Doesn't matter how old you are. We all got that in common. If you're 50, you used to be a kid. If you're 40, you used to be a kid. And there was a creative space that we all had at that time. So it's very important that we revisit the last time that we felt creative. If you feel that you're not creative, if you think that you're not creative, if you don't have that perspective that you are creative, when was the last time that you felt creative? And what happened at that time? Like challenge yourself. Challenge yourself and ask yourself, when was the last time that you felt creative? Revisit that time. Okay? And if you're having challenges with that, ask yourself, well, why am I having a challenge with that? Was there some sort of trigger built from that? Do you avoid being creative? Ask yourself those questions. So yeah, I wanted to share that. There's a lot of information that I'm curating to bring to you on this subject. All right. So just know you were born creative. So that means that you're still creative. You may not practice it. You may not practice the awareness. But if you were born creative, that's still who you are. Maybe it wasn't encouraged. Maybe it wasn't tapped into. Maybe it wasn't practiced to where you just kind of forgot about it. But you are creative. Don't ever forget that. And I'm here to remind you that you are creative. Okay? I thank you for tuning into this podcast. I will leave the links in the description so you can check them out. You can check out the full blogs of those articles. And I thank you. I thank you for rocking with me. Yo, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check me out on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. Check out the music. Check it all out. Check out the merchandise. You're going to see all that stuff, a lot more of it, at least. So, yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming through. You are creative. Creative are you. And don't forget that. All right.